Yes, the Georgia Bulldogs have won back-to-back national championships and have done so with a stellar defense as a calling card. But what if I told you in 2023, Georgia's defense could be one of the best that Kirby Smart has ever had? Hello, everybody. I'm Blayne Gilmer, and welcome to Southeastern 14. We cover all things SEC like nobody else. There's coverage every day of things coming out here on the channel, so make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications. I cover a lot of football, even here in the offseason. Chris Lee, Blake Lovell did a great job bringing you all the way through the NCAA tournament, all the March Madness stuff with SEC basketball. They covered women's SEC basketball. So they've got LSU and South Carolina as the time we're recording this that are still going to be in the Final Four over there. And of course, SEC baseball season is cranked up. All of it you can catch right here on Southeastern 14. But right now, it's all about football season. And ladies and gentlemen, there is a team in Athens, Georgia that has made itself a powerhouse. Back-to-back national champions. Kirby Smart has that thing rolling over there in the Classic City, and his calling card for most of his career has been defense. Now, Georgia was very explosive offensively, had a former walk-on quarterback in Stetson Bennett that became a Heisman Trophy finalist with Todd Monken and company over there, Brock Bowers, all those weapons on offense. And, hey, some of those guys are coming back for Georgia on offense. But what if I told you from the 2022 Georgia Bulldogs that were the fifth best scoring defense in the country, holding teams to 14.3 points per game, holding teams to 2.9 yards per carry, an average of allowing 77.1 rushing yards per game, and holding teams to a pass completion of 57.5%. 8 of the full-time starters from that defense are returning. I mean, that is a astronomical number, and then that doesn't even count the return of Dan Jackson, who was a key contributor on their 2021 team that was out most of all last year due to injury. He's going to be coming back, bringing back some experience, not only on special teams, but just a leadership element, some depth at safety. Because the pieces that they did lose, they lost them on the back end in Keely Ringo. They lost them on the back end in Chris Smith over there. So they did lose some in the secondary over there, a couple of key players that they'll have to replace. But getting a Dan Jackson back is going to be a big deal. Here's the thing. You give Kirby Smart an experienced defense, okay, that comes back. And you saw what happened in the 2021 season with all those starters. Those guys had been in the program. Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall, Quay Walker at the linebacker positions. They had Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt come back for another year up front. Now, they're not as old and as experienced and maybe as freakish in terms of raw size as that defense was. But we're going to go into some of the players here that Georgia has returned. And it is quite the scary concept that with Glenn Schumann returning, with Will Muschamp as a co-DC over there for Georgia running that defense, and keeping a large amount of continuity on that staff, that they are going to be returning this much talent on the defensive side of the ball. Truly not only a heavy favorite to be repeating, especially with the schedule they have in the SEC East, but you're looking at Georgia being undefeated going into that SEC championship game once again, possibly. So truly a huge opportunity for a Georgia team that, listen, there hasn't been a three-peat champion since in the 1930s with Minnesota. So we'll see if Georgia can capitalize on that, and that this defense will go a long way towards doing that. All right, let's talk about up front. Of course, they lose Jalen Carter, who is probably going to be, once late April comes around and all the the draft buzz and everything dies down from some of the stuff he's had going on off the field, I still think Jalen Carter will be solidly a top 5, top 10 pick. He's that kind of dominant player. Maybe when it comes down to it, you strip away all the other stuff, he might be the most talented player in the entire draft. So they're going to have to replace him. That's not something easy to do, but you got guys on the edge of the defense that are going to get after the passer. That's one way you go about doing this. And Mykel Williams and Marvin Jones Jr. specifically, number 13, number 7 in your picture there, they are guys who are going to get after it on the edge. Georgia was able to get pass rush in the middle with Jalen Carter last year. They're going to replace him with Bear Alexander in the middle. Zion Logue is a guy who not necessarily a full-time starter, but he has started games for Georgia. He's a senior. He comes back. Warren Brinson, a senior, who these are depth guys that they're able to roll in there now at this point. 2 seniors. Tramel Walthour, a senior, a guy who started a lot of football. Redshirt sophomore Tyrion Ingram Dawkins in the middle. But on the edges, they're dynamic in Mykel Williams and Marvin Jones Jr. And then there's Chaz Chambliss, just at the jack position, being able to be there as a junior now, a guy who started all last year and really had to step up into a role with Nolan Smith going down. So Chaz Chambliss is a guy who brings a physicality, who brings a leadership quality about him. Georgia has talent on the edges, and I think you'll see their sack production numbers actually go up in 2023 quite a bit. At the inside linebacker position, you've got leadership out of Jamon Dumas-Johnson. He's kind of, fit into that role. You think of guys like Roquan Smith. You think of guys like Nakobe Dean. There's a true leader in the middle, and Jamon Dumas-Johnson has become that at the linebacker position for Georgia. He's a guy who is going to know where everybody should be. They're communicating front end to back end. In that defense that Kirby Smart has, you can play the front separate from the back end, and he's kind of the go-between in there, making sure everybody knows where they are. So having that leader, that signal caller, kind of come back on your defense for Kirby Smart, for Glenn Schumann, for Will Muschamp, that is a tremendous benefit to this Georgia team. And listen, he's a productive guy. He's been someone ever since he got into ball games. In fact, that picture, that cutout right there, is from an interception that he had his freshman year that he ran back in for a touchdown against UAB. So Jamon Dumas-Johnson has been productive ever since he got there. Had 70 tackles a year ago, 9 tackles for a loss and 4 sacks. So Jamon Dumas-Johnson, really that was his first ever time being the guy last year, and Georgia wins a national championship. He comes back with that experience. Smael Mondon, number 2, is just absolutely a freaky athletic guy, long, rangy, is able to go sideline to sideline, and is one of the more athletic guys that Georgia's had at linebacker, in this run for Kirby Smart. And that's saying something, because they've produced multiple first-round draft picks, multiple guys who are making quite the living and quite the impact in the NFL. And Jalen Walker is a guy who, number 11, that can go inside to outside. They can bump him out on third down, use him different ways. This doesn't even include Xavier Sorry, who's going to be a guy who was highly recruited, hasn't really cracked the lineup yet. And there's 3 freshmen that have been brought in at the inside linebacker position. 2 guys that are early enrollees in CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson that are turning heads. Both could end up making an impact this year. So that second level of Georgia's defense is doing just fine. We haven't even mentioned guys like Darius Smith, who has a wingspan that is just, it looks like he's taking up the whole field. He's number 19 when Ohio State kicked the field goal last year. If that guy hadn't shanked it so far to the left, Darius Smith was up by the rafters up there in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, ready to block that thing if he'd have kicked it straight. So Georgia just has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the depth of their talent on defense, especially at the linebacker position. They brought in 2 5-star freshmen when you talk about the edge position, Damon Wilson and Samuel and Pimba that are going to be guys that help out the aforementioned Mykel Williams and Marvin Jones Jr. So unbelievably talented and experienced at the linebacker position. Also up front, really only replacing guys like they were without Nolan Smith for most of the season last year. So that's something that Chaz Chambliss and these guys are already used to a little bit. But in terms of the guys who were full-time started for the whole year, Jalen Carter, Robert Beal didn't even start the whole year. Mykel Williams really took over for him at certain points in the year. So I think that you're going to see this linebacking core experienced and ready to produce. I think most of the questions come on the back end of this defense. Who steps in for Chris Smith? He's going to play at that safety position. David Daniel Sisavon is a guy who could step in, but they do have experience when it comes to the trio that you see on the screen: Malaki Starks, Javon Bullard, and Kamari Lassiter. Listen, Keely Ringo got a lot of the attention last year at the cornerback position, but I think all season long, Kamari Lassiter was the best corner for Georgia. And that's saying a lot because Keely Ringo could be a first-round draft pick. He ran a 4.36 at the combine, freakish athlete, but Kamari Lassiter was just so consistent in how he covered guys. He brings a physicality out there. He's very intelligent. I think you're going to see Kamari Lassiter have a big year. Malaki Starks, as a freshman, he came in right off the bat, had a huge game against Oregon, interception there. Guy out of Jefferson, Georgia, that is just, as quality of a young man as you're going to find, on top of being a tremendous football player. He's that next great one at safety for Georgia, kind of that free roamer there at free safety. And Javon Bullard is a guy who plays that star position, kind of the hybrid, linebacker safety type role, can be down in the box, be very physical. They'll also rotate him back to the safety position just for depth. But they've got, as I said, Dan Jackson coming back. It's going to help out there. They've got sophomore Ja'Cory Thomas that is going to be in play there. Tyke Smith is a guy who can play safety or star, but he'll probably try to help out in that star role behind Javon Bullard, or maybe they have to rotate Javon Bullard over. Tyke Smith is a guy who was a All-American caliber player at West Virginia 2 years ago, tore his ACL last year going into the season, or the year before last going into the season, just kind of got back healthy and doing things this past year, but now that confidence should really be there. Look for him to take a step. But this Georgia team is absolutely loaded on the defensive side of the ball. Julian Humphrey is a redshirt freshman that could step in for Keely Ringo at that corner position. They brought in talented freshmen that could contribute right away in Jonell Aguero out of Massachusetts, A.J. Harris out of Alabama. These are both names of guys who could really, really make an impact, especially on special teams, and also find their way onto the field. And then they brought in Smoke Bowie, a transfer from Texas A&M, who is a Bainbridge, Georgia native. That's where Kirby Smart's from, so bringing him back into the fold. The point is, Georgia's defense is absolutely loaded. I'm not saying that they're going to be as good as the 2021 defense that produced the five guys in the first round. I mean, realistically, that's very, very hard to do, but they could be just as productive in terms of knowing this system and knowing the where to be and how to defend teams. And you've got all of this experience. Not only, guys, like I said, it's not only the 8 starters, full-time starters that are coming back, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys on the 2 deep in the second team of this defense that have had starting experience before, that have been in this program for 4 to 5 years. Kirby Smart has a dream defense coming his way, and I think one that you'll see limit teams to very little points, and I think one that you will see is going to be hard to run the football on, and you got to make sure you're sound on the back end, but got some guys coming in there. Georgia's defense is going to be trouble for teams in 2023. Once again, I'm Blayne Gilmer. This is Southeastern 14. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you think about this 2023 football season and all the videos that we're dropping here. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll catch you next time on Southeastern 14.